Picture this. While the world preaches about turning the other cheek and letting bygones be bygones, there's a breed of man who operates by an entirely different code, one that society desperately wants to break but never can. He doesn't chase validation, he doesn't beg for second chances, and when betrayal strikes, he doesn't offer his heart as a sacrifice on the altar of false peace. Society calls him cold, unforgiving, even cruel, but he knows something they don't. Forgiveness is often the weapon used against the wise. Welcome to Sigma Male Community, where we strip away the comfortable lies and reveal the uncomfortable truths that govern the lives of men who refuse to be conquered by others' expectations. Today we're diving deep into the psychological fortress of the Sigma male's approach to betrayal and forgiveness, a topic that will make some uncomfortable because it challenges the very foundation of what we've been taught about healing, moving on, and being the bigger person. The Sigma male doesn't operate within traditional social hierarchies or conventional wisdom about emotional processing, and his approach to forgiveness reflects this fundamental difference. This isn't about holding grudges out of spite or weakness. This is about the calculated, strategic protection of one's sovereignty in a world that constantly seeks to exploit emotional vulnerability. We're about to explore 11 brutal truths about why the Sigma male never forgives, why he doesn't have to, and why his approach might be the most psychologically sound strategy for maintaining inner peace and personal power in an increasingly manipulative world. 1. Remembrance is his armor, forgetfulness is surrender. The Sigma male understands something fundamental about human nature that escapes most people. Memory is not just a record of the past, it's a prediction system for the future. While society demands that he practice selective amnesia disguised as virtue, the Sigma weaponizes his memory as the ultimate early warning system. He doesn't just recall the betrayal. He catalogs the exact moment loyalty dissolved, the inflection in the voice when lies were spoken, the calculated vacuum where support should have been. This isn't bitterness coursing through his veins, it's intelligence in its purest form, an impenetrable database that ensures history's predators never get a second opportunity to strike. Forgiving, in his mind, means voluntarily deleting the evidence, willingly disarming himself before a proven enemy who has already demonstrated their capacity for harm. This relentless recall isn't rooted in hatred or the inability to move forward. It's the ultimate act of self-defense and emotional intelligence rolled into one. The Stoics understood that wisdom comes from learning from experience, and Marcus Aurelius himself wrote extensively about the importance of remembering lessons learned through adversity. The Sigma male applies this ancient wisdom to his modern relationships, ensuring that only those who have proven themselves worthy ever breach his carefully constructed perimeter again. His memory becomes his guarantee against future manipulation, his shield against those who would exploit his capacity for trust. While others stumble repeatedly into the same emotional traps, the Sigma moves forward with clarity, his past experiences serving as a compass that guides him away from those who would drain his energy and compromise his peace. 2. Reconciliation is a fool's errand, not his healing. The world peddles closure like a magic pill, selling the narrative that healing requires revisiting wounds, dissecting pain, and begging for understanding from the very person who caused the rupture. The Sigma male sees this therapeutic theater for what it truly is, a trap baited with false hope and designed to keep him circling the drain of someone else's dysfunction. His healing isn't found in tearful conversations under dim lights or in the empty apologies of those who showed their true colors when the stakes were real. Instead, his recovery is forged in decisive absence, in the deliberate construction of a future that exists entirely separate from the toxic presence that once threatened his peace. While others exhaust themselves asking why, and seeking explanations that will never satisfy, he's already blueprinted and begun constructing a reality devoid of corrosive influences. The Sigma's approach to healing aligns perfectly with Stoic principles that emphasize focusing on what lies within one's control rather than seeking external validation or closure from others. He understands that true strength comes from internal resilience, not from the fragile hope that others will somehow validate his pain or make amends for their betrayal. His healing occurs not by revisiting the battlefield of past hurts, but by fortifying entirely new territory where such betrayals become impossible. The betrayal that once threatened to destroy him becomes the bedrock of his next evolution, compacted under the weight of his forward momentum and transformed into unshakable foundation. His silence in the face of others' attempts at reconciliation isn't emptiness. It's the fertile ground where his unbreakable future takes root, free from the contamination of those who prove themselves unworthy of his trust. 3. Patterns scream louder than apologies whisper. When confronted with tears, scripted remorse, and empty promises of change, the Sigma male doesn't listen to lips. He watches lives unfold with the detached observation of a scientist studying predictable phenomena. He has developed what psychologists call pattern recognition at an almost supernatural level, deciphering the recurring loops in human behavior that others miss entirely. The vanishing acts when support is needed, the convenient excuses when commitment is required, the subtle shifts in loyalty when vulnerability is perceived, these are the broadcasts he replays and analyzes. Your sorry becomes meaningless static against the clear signal of your demonstrated character. The moment someone calculated his expendability, revealed their true nature under pressure, or showed their willingness to sacrifice his well-being for their convenience, that's the data point that matters most in his psychological database. The Sigma's pattern-aware approach reflects the Stoic emphasis on rational thinking and objective observation over emotional manipulation. When the pattern inevitably reasserts itself, and research shows that it almost always does, he doesn't issue warnings, ultimatums, or second chances. Instead, he executes the pre-programmed response that his pattern analysis has already determined: permanent, silent departure from the source of dysfunction. This isn't revenge in the traditional sense. It's the logical conclusion written in the immutable data of someone's actions over time. He simply closes the file on that relationship, archives the lessons learned, and redirects his energy toward more worthy pursuits. While others remain trapped in cycles of betrayal and forgiveness, hoping against hope that toxic patterns will somehow change, the Sigma moves forward with the clarity that comes from accepting reality as it is rather than as he wishes it could be. 4. Trust is a single-use currency, not a renewable resource. In the Sigma male's carefully managed emotional economy, trust isn't treated like plastic credit that can be restored after damage. It's porcelain, precious and irreplaceable once shattered. When someone betrays his trust, they haven't simply bounced a check that can be covered with an apology and a promise to do better. They've declared complete insolvency in the only currency that truly matters in his world. He doesn't believe in the mythology of rebuilding trust because rebuilding implies that the original foundation was somehow salvageable, that the structural integrity wasn't fundamentally compromised by the betrayal. The Sigma knows better. The betrayal revealed that the foundation was never solid to begin with, that it was built on sand rather than bedrock, constructed from pleasant illusions rather than tested reality. The Stoic concept of accepting what cannot be changed applies perfectly to the Sigma's approach to broken trust. Rather than exhausting himself trying to reconstruct something that was proven to be fundamentally flawed, he incinerates the entire blueprint and starts fresh. The person who betrayed him isn't given a probationary period, a chance to earn their way back into his good graces, or an opportunity to prove that they've changed. Instead, they are issued a permanent eviction notice from the architecture of his life, their access revoked, their influence nullified, their ability to cause future harm eliminated through complete disconnection. There are no debt collectors in his emotional world, no negotiations for partial restoration of privileges, no installment plans for regaining trust. The account is closed, the assets seized, and the vault sealed with the kind of finality that only comes from understanding that some violations cannot and should not be forgiven. 5. His exit is silent, your irrelevance deafening. Don't expect dramatic soliloquies, social media manifestos, or tearful confrontations when a Sigma male reaches his breaking point with someone who has betrayed his trust. His response to fracture is a silence so profound and complete that it literally restructures the reality around him, creating a void where that person's influence once existed. This isn't passive aggression masquerading as maturity, nor is it the silent treatment designed to manipulate or punish. Instead, it's active deletion, the conscious, deliberate removal of someone's ability to affect his emotional state, influence his decisions, or impact his future in any meaningful way. He weaponizes the void that the betrayer created through their actions, filling it not with rage, resentment, or revenge fantasies, but with impenetrable resolve and redirected energy toward more worthy pursuits and relationships. This profound silence serves as his final word, his ultimate power move in a game where most people exhaust themselves with explanations, arguments, and attempts to make others understand their perspective. The Sigma silence broadcasts one undeniable truth that cuts deeper than any verbal confrontation could. The betrayer has been permanently scrubbed from his operational matrix, their existence reduced to zero relevance in his evolving trajectory. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the power that comes from focusing only on what serves one's highest purpose, and the Sigma embodies this principle completely. He doesn't mourn the loss to the person who betrayed him because that would require viewing them as still relevant to his story. Instead, he utilizes every ounce of energy that might have been wasted on anger or reconciliation attempts to reinforce his inner citadel and strengthen his defenses against future infiltration by unworthy individuals. 6. Forgiveness grants access, and you're permanently blacklisted. Emotional proximity in the Sigma male's world operates like a high-security government facility where clearance is earned through unwavering proof of loyalty, integrity, and mutual respect over extended periods of time. When someone betrays this carefully granted access, they haven't simply made a mistake that can be corrected with an apology and a promise to do better. They've committed a catastrophic security breach that reveals fundamental flaws in their character and judgment. Forgiveness, from the Sigma's perspective, isn't about his feelings, his capacity for compassion, or his ability to move beyond hurt. Instead, it represents the foolish reissuing of an access pass to someone who has already proven they will exploit the privilege when it serves their interests. Why would a rational person voluntarily restore security clearance to a proven infiltrator who demonstrated their willingness to betray trust when the stakes were real? The Sigma doesn't see someone seeking forgiveness as a repentant soul deserving of second chances. He sees them as a documented security risk whose patterns of behavior have been cataloged and analyzed. Rather than engaging in the emotional labor of forgiveness, he upgrades his entire security protocol, patches the vulnerability that the betrayer exposed, rewrites his emotional encryption, and implements safeguards that make future breaches far more difficult. The person who violated his trust doesn't just lose their previous level of access. They become fundamentally incompatible with his evolved system of relationships and emotional connections. Their betrayal forced him to grow, to strengthen his defenses, to become more discerning about who deserves proximity to his inner world. Access isn't just revoked temporarily while they work to prove themselves. It's permanently deleted from the system, with their identity flagged as a known threat to be avoided in all future emotional transactions. 7. Being the bigger person is codependency in disguise. Society glorifies the martyr who swallows poison to make the poisoner feel better, celebrating those who absorb abuse and call it virtue while labeling the refusal to enable dysfunction as somehow lesser or cruel. The Sigma male sees this bigger person performance for what it truly is: spiritual cowardice wrapped in the appealing packaging of moral superiority. He rejects this toxic theater completely: the desperate need for public admiration, the careful construction of magnanimous optics, the poisonous belief that absorbing harm somehow elevates one's moral status in the eyes of others. His goal isn't to win approval from those who would judge his boundaries or to earn applause from a crowd that doesn't understand the true cost of maintaining his peace. His only imperative is radical freedom. Freedom from toxic drama, unrealistic expectations, and the emotional pollution that comes from maintaining connections with those who have proven themselves harmful to his well-being. The Stoic principle of living in accordance with virtue doesn't require self-sacrifice to those who would exploit that virtue for their own benefit. The Sigma wears no spiritual mask designed to impress others with his capacity for forgiveness. Instead, he forges emotional armor designed to protect his energy, time, and peace from those who would drain these precious resources. Let them call him harsh. He knows it's honesty about boundaries being labeled as cruelty by those who benefit from their absence. Let them demand forgiveness and reconciliation. He demands evolution on his own terms, without the backward glance that would compromise his forward momentum. The bigger person mythology is often just codependency dressed up as spirituality, and the Sigma refuses to participate in relationships where his health and happiness are sacrificed to maintain someone else's comfort with their own toxic behavior patterns. 8. Apologies are often self-serving noise, not signals of change. Operating as a human pattern decoder honed by experience and sharpened by disappointment, the Sigma male has learned to recognize most apologies for what they truly are: not sincere reckonings with the harm caused, but sophisticated discomfort management tools designed to restore the apologizer's emotional equilibrium. They're not sorry they betrayed trust, violated boundaries, or caused pain. They're sorry they got caught, sorry the consequences proved inconvenient, sorry that their actions created friction that now requires them to do emotional labor they'd rather avoid. The Sigma has witnessed this loop too many times to be fooled by its latest iteration. transgression followed by tearful apology, brief behavioral ceasefire while attention is focused elsewhere, then inevitable regression to the same destructive patterns that caused the problem in the first place. He's learned to discount words immediately and completely, focusing instead on the unedited footage of someone's actions when they think the cameras are off and the stakes are real. The Stoic emphasis on observing reality rather than being swayed by emotional manipulation serves the Sigma well in these situations. When the betrayal inevitably replays itself, following the same predictable script with minor variations, he doesn't engage with the rerun or invest energy in hoping this time will be different. Instead, he cancels the subscription entirely, removing his attention, energy, and emotional investment from someone who has demonstrated their commitment to harmful patterns over genuine change. Research in psychology supports this approach, showing that people who repeatedly betray trust often continue these patterns regardless of apologies or promises to change. The Sigma's refusal to accept empty apologies isn't cynicism. It's pattern recognition informed by both ancient wisdom and modern understanding of human behavior. He saves his energy for relationships with people whose actions consistently align with their words, rather than wasting it on those who use apologies as a reset button for destructive behavior. 9. His peace is non-negotiable, not a bargaining chip. Forgiveness often functions as emotional tax evasion for the guilty, allowing them to transfer the burden of their actions to their victims while avoiding the full weight of consequences for their choices. The Sigma male refuses to pay this tax with his tranquility, recognizing that his inner sanctum isn't a democratic institution where everyone gets a vote on his emotional well-being. It's an absolute monarchy where his peace reigns supreme, where his serenity is protected with the same fierce dedication that a king would use to protect his kingdom from invaders. When someone's betrayal declares war on that sovereignty, he doesn't negotiate treaties with the aggressor or seek diplomatic solutions that might restore the previous balance. Instead, he fortifies his borders, exiles the threat permanently, and ensures that his core calm remains unassailable regardless of external pressure to reconcile or forgive. The Sigma's approach reflects the Stoic understanding that true strength comes from maintaining inner equilibrium regardless of external circumstances or social pressure. Compassion exists within his framework, but it's fiercely guarded, intelligently allocated, and reserved exclusively for those who haven't weaponized his trust against him. Protecting his core peace isn't negotiable, not for someone else's guilt about their actions, not for social pressure from those who don't understand his boundaries, and certainly not for the illusion of harmony that comes at the cost of his psychological well-being. The discomfort that others feel when facing the consequences of their betrayal is simply the natural price of their actions, not his responsibility to alleviate through forgiveness. His serenity represents non-negotiable territory that he will defend with the same ruthless dedication that nations use to protect their most vital resources, because he understands that without inner peace, all other achievements become meaningless. 10. Logic trumps sentiment every single time. While the world drowns in a swamp of emotional reasoning and, but they meant well, excuses, the Sigma male navigates by the cold, reliable stars of logic and rational analysis. He dissects betrayal not through the distorting lens of hurt feelings or wishful thinking, but through the clear prism of cause and effect, pattern recognition, and objective risk assessment informed by both ancient wisdom and modern understanding of human psychology. Forgiveness often demands the deliberate ignoring of data, the documented history of someone's behavior, the statistical probability of recurrence based on established patterns, the inherent character flaw that their actions revealed under pressure. The Sigma refuses this willful blindness, understanding that sentiment without logic is the fog that obscures genuine danger and leaves one vulnerable to repeated harm from the same sources. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about the importance of seeing situations clearly, without the distortion that comes from emotional attachment to particular outcomes. The Sigma embodies this principle completely when evaluating whether someone deserves continued access to his trust and energy. His clarity is razor-sharp and uncompromising. Someone demonstrated a capacity for harm when it served their interests, revealing their willingness to sacrifice his well-being for their convenience or benefit. Logic dictates that such a person represents an unacceptable risk for future harm, regardless of their current expressions of remorse or promises of change. No amount of emotional pleading, social pressure, or appeals to his compassion can override this fundamental equation. because he understands that protecting his future self requires making decisions based on demonstrated reality rather than hopeful possibilities. While others remain trapped in cycles of betrayal because they prioritize sentiment over logic, the Sigma moves forward with the clarity that comes from accepting hard truths about human nature. 11. Consequence is the only language betrayal understands. Society desperately attempts to insulate actions from their true weight, offering forgiveness as a societal eraser that magically removes the sting from betrayal and allows harmful behavior to continue without full accountability. The Sigma male reinstates consequence as the natural law of human relationships, understanding that removing the genuine cost of betrayal doesn't promote healing. It enables future harm by teaching people that their destructive actions can be neutralized through manipulation of their victims' compassion. He doesn't seek the suffering of those who betrayed him, but he ensures that their actions carry their inherent, permanent cost: complete exile from his world and permanent loss of access to everything his friendship, loyalty, and trust once provided. This isn't cruelty for its own sake. It's cosmic justice in action, the restoration of natural law that holds people accountable for their choices rather than allowing them to escape consequences through emotional manipulation. The Stoic concept of accepting fate while taking responsibility for one's choices applies perfectly to the Sigma's approach to consequences and accountability. By refusing to forgive betrayal, he becomes the immovable object against which someone's harmful actions finally meet their irreversible consequence, teaching them through experience what words and warnings could never convey. He understands that true compassion sometimes requires allowing people to experience the full weight of their choices rather than rescuing them from consequences that might actually promote growth and change. The bank of his loyalty and trust is permanently closed to those who defaulted on their emotional debts, not out of vindictiveness, but because he recognizes that some violations create damage that cannot and should not be repaired. His refusal to forgive serves as a clear message to both the betrayer and anyone observing the situation. Certain actions have permanent consequences, and trust, once broken, cannot be restored through apologies alone. As we reach the end of this exploration into the Sigma male's approach to forgiveness, remember that what we've discussed today isn't about becoming cold, heartless, or incapable of human connection. Instead, it's about recognizing that true strength often lies in knowing when to walk away, when to protect your peace, and when to refuse to participate in the endless cycle of betrayal and false reconciliation that keeps so many people trapped in toxic patterns. The Sigma male understands something that society desperately tries to obscure. Forgiveness is not always virtuous, boundaries are not always cruel, and protecting your emotional well-being is not always selfish. These 11 principles we've explored today represent a blueprint for maintaining your sovereignty in a world that constantly seeks to compromise it, a guide for preserving your energy for relationships and pursuits that actually deserve your investment. The ancient Stoics knew that wisdom comes from understanding what lies within our control and what doesn't, and the Sigma male applies this principle ruthlessly to his relationships and emotional boundaries. You cannot control whether others betray you, lie to you, or attempt to manipulate your compassion for their benefit, but you can absolutely control your response to these violations, your willingness to continue investing in harmful dynamics, and your commitment to protecting the peace you've worked so hard to build. If these principles resonate with your own experience, if you've found yourself nodding along as we've discussed the futility of trying to rebuild trust with those who've proven themselves unworthy, then you've found your tribe here at Sigma Male Community. This channel exists for men who refuse to apologize for their boundaries, who understand that true strength sometimes looks like silence, and who recognize that the most compassionate thing you can do for yourself is to stop offering your trust to those who've already shown you exactly who they are when the stakes are real. Hit that like button if this video gave you the clarity you needed to stop questioning your instincts about toxic people in your life. Share this with any man who needs permission to stop participating in the forgiveness theater that society demands but that serves no one except those who benefit from your continued vulnerability. Comment below and tell us about a time when refusing to forgive someone actually improved your life. Your story might be exactly what another man needs to hear to finally walk away from a situation that's been draining his energy and compromising his peace. And if you haven't already subscribed to Sigma Male Community, hit that button and ring the notification bell, because this channel is your source for the uncomfortable truths and practical wisdom that will help you build the kind of life that operates on your terms, not society's expectations. Remember, gentlemen, your peace is not negotiable, your boundaries are not suggestions, and your refusal to forgive those who've betrayed you is not a character flaw. It's a strength that will serve you well in a world that often confuses weakness with virtue. Until next time, stay strong, stay sovereign, and never apologize for protecting what matters most. Share this video with friends.